When Coach Boom speaks, we listen.
Yards shy of the record. Williams breaks a hole. Williams, hello record book. Ricky Williams runs to the Hall of Fame. Touchback. Ricky Williams, touchdown.
Young from the shotgun. Back to throw. Vince looks. Under pressure. He'll tuck it and run. Vince to the 5. Young. Touchdown, Texas. Touchdown, Vince Young. He's done it again.
Longhorn Nation, we're back.
Welcome into this edition of the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Zach Dimmitt. As always, Zach, we finally heard from Will Muschamp. He spoke to the media yesterday, and he had a lot to say. He was funny. He was quippy. He brought that energy. He shaded Kirk Bowles, which I thought was hilarious with the age thing. He was letting everybody have it, and I couldn't have enjoyed that interview more. But he also said a couple of different things that I thought were particularly interesting. Starting off with the first thing that he said, which was the description of the shirt he was wearing, which was NP or NT equals NP. Or doesn't equal. Let's watch the clip. NT equals NP.
Thud equals no play. So if you don't thud at practice and you don't throw your face in the fan at practice, and that means you're probably not going to be a good tackler. So if you don't thud at practice, that means you're not going to be a good tackler. And the best defenses I've been a part of, they tackled extremely well. And right now in offensive football, you better be able to tackle and play in space. So we got some guys, not many. They don't want to thud at practice. I call it a turn down. If you turn down too much, you won't get on the bus to go to the game. You'll be watching it from home. So if you don't thud, you won't play. That's what this means. It's very important to me.
And I thought that was incredibly interesting, Zach, because he's kind of sending a warning out to the players. Like if you don't bring your hat and you don't hit hard and you don't get in there and try and be physical on defense, you're not going to play for this football team. And I couldn't love that more.
Yeah, it's a much different approach from Pete Kwiatkowski, who, in the few times over the 5 years he was at Texas when he did speak to the media, he was just kind of a, softer spoken guy, just different approach. It wasn't a bad approach, just different. And I this is refreshing to see Will Muschamp, here on campus and seeing his presence, because I think as a DC, you kind of need to have his mentality that he brings to the table. And it was really nice listening to him yesterday. I was there talking to some of the assistant coaches and listening to Coach Muschamp, and it was nice to hear what all those defensive guys had to say, because it was only the defensive guys, and then now next week or so we'll be talking to the offensive staff. That'll be really interesting as well. So but yeah, for Muschamp, it is kind of a warning to the players, because like he said yesterday, he's not here to make friends. He's here to coach, he's here to develop, he's here to make this defense better than what it already was, which is going to be a challenge, because Texas's defense has been a pretty solid strength. And it's even been elite at times during some of those CFP teams. Last year, there were a few moments where it left more to be desired, but takeaways were one of the strengths. But I think, obviously, we've talked about it before, a lot of people didn't like PK's approach on defense. He was more of a, play it safe sort of guy. And that can work for you. And I think Muschamp has a much different approach. And so, yeah, he's not here to make friends. He's here to really make this defense fly all over the field. I think they certainly have the personnel to do that. And when you add him to the table, with that scheme, it creates a lot of excitement for this defense next season. And I really hope that we're going to be able to listen to him in interviews more this offseason, and then hopefully as the season goes on. Typically, during the season, we don't really ever hear from the assistant coaches. The only time we ever really heard from from like PK and maybe like Kyle Flood or Jeff Banks or whatever was during the college football playoff when they made those guys available, like after that home game over Clemson. But and that was pretty nice. But other than that, we don't really get to hear from these guys. Hopefully that changes this year, so we can hear more from Will Muschamp, because I think it's gonna turn a lot of heads and raise a lot of attention whenever he steps up to the mic, like it did.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's certainly a different personality than PK. That's very evident in the way that he speaks to the media and just in his general energy that he brings about him, both on the field and in the interview room. And it's pretty refreshing. He also is not shy to call people out either, which I think is, again, extremely refreshing. Here's Muschamp talking about how Texas players actually go to class, and maybe calling out some other teams, no teams being named, maybe calling out some other universities where that's not necessarily the case.
Standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, some of the testing numbers, obviously they need to have good tape. They got to have a good transcript. Our players go to school here in Texas, so we actually go to class. Not like some other places. So at the end of the day, all of those things are encompassing and very important to any student athlete here.
Yeah, and that's kind of it, right? And it's a short clip, but it's kind of going viral right now. It's been all over Barstool and On3 and ES, like anywhere you look, you're going to see this clip right now, and it's kind of true. There's this weird phenomenon in college football going on right now where people are kind of finding ways to skate around the rules, not just in NIL or whatever the case may be, but also academically. I mean, I know he was probably either misquoted or misunderstood when he said this, but like Carson Beck might be an example of this, where he says, I haven't been to class in 2 years. I graduated 2 years ago. I haven't sat in a classroom in 2 years. It's like, well, I don't know if that means that he's just didn't go to class for his last 2 years at Miami or whatever the case. The point I'm trying to make here is Texas is holding their kids accountable. And I really do love that Will Muschamp is not really afraid to kind of go at some people.
Yeah, I love to see some of the reactions from people, on social media saying, "Oh, well, weren't you just at Georgia?" And Carson Beck was at Miami, but he was obviously at Georgia when Will Muschamp was there. And so it's like, oh, so are you talking about your former employer and stuff like that? And and then people are saying, oh, Texas just does the same thing. I mean, who really knows? But pretty funny quote from him there. You just wouldn't hear like maybe Pete Kwiatkowski saying something like that. It's just a different personality in the room, and on that coaching staff. So yeah, that was pretty funny. He's Will Muschamp. He's gonna really be brutally honest, and that's what you want from a football coach. And people may have their different opinions about that approach. I personally just love, regardless of what sport it is and regardless of what profession it is, I really like when people are just kind of brutally honest like that, but especially when it comes to football. And I think Sark has had some times where he's been pretty honest as well, and so we kind of have a guy with a similar approach there. But yeah, I like I said previously, I really hope we get to talk to Will Muschamp more during the season, because we'll just keep getting kind of quotes like this. And let's say Texas has a bad game on defense, I love to hear what he has to say about any sort of bad defensive performance they might have later this season. I hope that they don't, obviously, but of course there's going to be some slip ups. It's a first year under a new DC. I would just love to hear his post game reaction if there's a bunch of blown coverages and Texas ends up losing the game, because we may not have a recreation of the whiteboard clip, but you already know that he's gonna, maybe so, but or maybe he'll just throw a tablet or something. But at the end of the day, he did say yesterday that he doesn't know how to use any technology. He doesn't. What did he say? He doesn't know how to turn on a TV or something like that. He just knows how to coach. So maybe not a tablet for him, but I would like to see him go scorched earth on Texas defense if they somehow have a game where they kind of don't meet the standard. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, apparently Will Muschamp doesn't know what Netflix is either. Somebody asked him, I don't know if it was during COVID or if it was recently, I can't remember the exact context, but somebody asked him, was like, do you want to watch some Netflix? And he was like, yeah, that sounds like a great show. Like, no, it's a streaming service. He's like, what's a streaming service? Anyway, I love it. He's hysterical. He was also asked a couple other things that I thought were particularly interesting, Zach. First, just very quickly, he was asked if he ever wants to be a head coach again. He said no. So that seems like that ship has kind of sailed. And Texas won't necessarily have to worry about him getting hired away to go somewhere else. And I think that's for the best. He seems to be his best self when he is a defensive coordinator. Now, he is technically the head coach, according to Steve Sarkisian, of the Texas Longhorns defense, which would also kind of lead me to believe that you may hear a little bit more from him this season, as Zach was kind of alluding to. Just, that kind of relationship that they have there, with one being ahead of, in charge of the offense, one being in charge of the defense. Maybe you will hear a lot more from him this year. I certainly hope you do. But the other thing or one of the other things that I thought was pretty interesting was he was asked about Colin Simmons. And there have been a lot of people who have been wondering, what is Colin Simmons, going to look like in 2026 in this new scheme? Because it's been a minute since Will Muschamp has had an edge rusher of the caliber of Colin Simmons. And he said kind of raised some eyebrows a little bit. He said Colin is playing multiple spots. So we know he technically, by day one, I would say he's our jack, which is, the outside linebacker, hybrid defensive end role. He can do a lot of different things. We've got to have him activated in the rush a lot. I mean, he's very slippery in the rush. He's just got really good instincts in the run game and in the pass game on protections, does a really good job of those things, but he's also going to play some end, which, the more in Will Muschamp's defense, it's like kind of a bigger, more edge setting, where Lance Jackson is going to play most of his snaps, the stronger, right, bigger defensive end. And he's also going to play some stack linebacker at times. His job is to put, he says his job is to put Colin Simmons in situations where people can't ID where he is all the time. And he's also been very impressed with how he has embraced that. It's, if you're moving Colin Simmons all over the field, Zach, it's just going to cause more headaches for the defense. And I kind of love this, because one of the things that, we kind of complained about a little bit with Colin Simmons last year was the fact that he, dropped into coverage a little bit too often for our liking. Like, I don't know if you complained about that, but I complained about that a lot. And it seems like, he was either rushing the passer or he was dropping back into coverage. There really wasn't any in between. He was always lined up in the same spot where the opposing offense expected him to be. Now it seems like Will Muschamp's going to be moving him all around the place so that they can't really get comfortable with where he's at on the field.
Yeah, with a guy like Colin Simmons, as athletic as he is, as skilled as he is, as strong as he is, I think you do benefit by having him move around to as many places as possible where he can produce while also catching the offense off guard. Yeah. At the end of the day, even if he is just, getting into his stance and rushing the passer every single snap, you're still going to have pretty good success. But yeah, I kind of like that approach. But at the same time, you could argue that it is a little bit risky for a guy like Colin Simmons, who, of course, is going to be probably a first round draft pick, next off season. And so if he's in this kind of a versatile of a role and doesn't produce at the level that he wants to, what does that say about his season? Doesn't mean that it's going to be a bad season, but maybe he's not putting up the numbers that he wants. Maybe he's not producing the way he wants because he's kind of all over the place instead of just focusing on being a defensive end and being the best pass rusher in the country. That's just kind of playing devil's advocate there. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's just an interesting topic of discussion because you kind of have to look at it in both ways, the positives and the negatives. So, I do like though what Muschamp has planned for Colin Simmons because while you can't look at the negatives, I feel very strong about the positives in that regard. And so he's arguably the team's best player. You have Arch Manning, you have Cam Coleman, Trevor Gooseby. You can throw in Rasheem Biles as well. Maybe we haven't seen him quite yet, but you could argue Colin Simmons is the team's best player, and so you want to utilize him in as many ways as you can, and maximize his skill. So we'll have to wait and see how all that plays out. As we've heard from Coach Sark, Simmons just absolutely wrecks every practice by rushing the passer, but he can also wreck the game in other ways too. And I'm excited to see potentially what that looks like later this fall.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the way he was able to wreck the game in the run game as well. We saw him force the fumble against Diego Pavia in Vanderbilt that really turned the game on its head in Texas's favor. We saw him get 3 straight TFLs in the run game against Florida. That's he can do it all. And, I'll be a little bit more bold than you, Zach. I don't think he's arguably the best player on the team. I think he is the best player on the team. In fact, I would argue that he is arguably the best player in college football. Yeah. Certainly the best defensive player in college football, but any advantage that you can give him against opposing offenses, I think, is only going to help him out in the long run. So I'm really excited to see what Coach Boom does with him. And then real quickly, Zach, before we move on to the basketball stuff and transfer portal and all that stuff, Will Muschamp was also asked about man coverage. And I liked this a lot. I liked what he had to say a lot because last year with PK, very, very often, we would just be putting our head in our hands because it'd be 3rd and 5 and your corners would be playing, 10 yards off the line of scrimmage or giving a 15-yard cushion sometimes and playing way too far off the line, allowing teams to operate underneath and convert first downs and all those different things. And Will Muschamp is known for playing a lot of tight man coverage. And, he ostensibly said, we're going to be playing a ton of man coverage. We're very comfortable with playing man coverage with the guys that we have, even though those guys didn't do a whole lot of it that last year. We feel really good that they have the skill set to do that. And the reason they like to do it is because they like to make life difficult on the quarterback. They like to make the quarterback throw into tight windows and tight spaces. And I think that that's only going to help this defense. And it's nice to hear the confirmation as well that we are going to be seeing a ton of press man coverage from this defense.
Yeah, and it also shows that he's confident in the personnel because if he wasn't, he may not have sounded as confident when talking about man coverage if he didn't think that the guys in the secondary could do it. So like a zone obviously gives you a little bit more of a cushion and a safety net if it's operated correctly, or man. If you don't have the guys that are able to guard, you're gonna get beat pretty badly. That's really nice to hear because we've heard a lot about Bo Masco at corner, and if he's gonna play nickel or outside, and obviously there's Grayson Littleton and Cade Phillips, but a lot of the other guys in that secondary. Now there's definitely some talent, but it's you got to wait and see what that looks like, what that depth chart looks like this fall, and so. It's not that there's been any question about their talent, but just kind of, that has been one of the storylines I think that's been worth following is how is the secondary going to perform. And clearly, Will Muschamp is pretty confident in that, which is good to see because there's a lot of returners in that secondary. And so it's, in my opinion, it can only mean good things moving forward. Especially with the way some of those guys played at the end of last season, Kobe Black and Cade Phillips, like I mentioned, kind of finished the season on a little bit of a higher note. And so, I'm excited to see what that looks like, what that will end up, leading to for the rest of the defense. Because if your coverage is really sticky downfield, good luck trying to block Colin Simmons and Lance Jackson on the edges for a long time. Yeah,
Texas really does have all the pieces that they need on the defensive side of the ball. And Muschamp still has his concerns. He voiced his concerns about the linebacker group in the sense that they don't have a lot of returning starters in that group, and that's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, there's a ton of talent there. Anthony Smith, Rasheem Biles, Tyler Atkinson, LJ Cryer. All those guys are very talented, but not a lot of them have played in this system or played in Austin outside of Anthony Smith. So there are some things that he is still keeping his eye on. He's going to leave no stone unturned on this defense, and I really can't wait to watch one of the best defensive minds in the game take over this defense, and I'm just really excited for it. Let's take a quick break, Zach. When we come back, we are going to talk some losses in the transfer portal for Texas. They now have 3 players who have entered the portal, and some targets that Zach has put together that Texas could be in the midst of pursuing to kind of amp up this roster. So stick with us after this break, and we'll be right back.
This episode of the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast is brought to you by Custom Built Trailers of Mississippi. Custom Built Trailers is the largest in-stock trailer dealer in Mississippi with a variety of options to choose from flatbed goosenecks to bumper pull equipment trailers and car haulers to enclosed trailers and basic utility trailers. We do a little bit of everything. And if we don't have exactly what you're looking for in stock, we can typically have your custom-built trailer built in 7 to 10 working days. 0% financing options are available, and we also deliver out of state. So give Custom Built Trailers of Mississippi a call at 601-722-9581 today and let us take care of your hauling needs. Custom Built Trailers of Mississippi. If we don't have it, we'll be glad to build it.
Welcome back to the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Galatz, and joined, as always, by my co-host, Zach Dimmitt. Zach, the transfer portal is in full swing for basketball, and we've had 3 losses for Texas so far, one of which wasn't that surprising. We talked about it on the show last week. The other 2, I feel like, were pretty surprising, especially considering what one of them said after the loss to the loss in the NCAA tournament. So that loss to Purdue. So we have Nick Cody, who has decided to enter the transfer portal with 2 years of eligibility remaining. Guard Simeon Wilcher has also entered the portal. That's the one that we weren't necessarily too surprised about. And then another surprising one happens yesterday afternoon. Camden Heide, the transfer from Purdue, he will have 1 year of eligibility remaining. But that's 3 players that played a lot of basketball for Texas last year.
Yeah, I mean, Simeon Wilcher, he played in every single game, which is pretty crazy to think. I mean, Texas actually had tons of great, injury luck, if that's the right way to put it. In other words, not a lot of injuries, really. The only injury really all season, or I guess it was later in SEC play, but was Lucina Traore. Other than that, really healthy squad. And so we got to see a lot of these guys. And, Simeon Wilcher, because he played so much, he also had a lot of more opportunities for mistakes. Wasn't super involved in the offense. Made a few shots here and there. He was a decent outside shooter. Not a good enough point guard. Not a good enough defender. Had some solid moments as a defender. Early in non-conference play, but just the turnovers was a major issue for him. I mean, Modest Fokatitis and Jalen Swain had the highest usage on the team, and so obviously they led Texas in turnovers. But Simeon Wilcher was 3rd in turnovers total, which is more than Jordan Pope, which is more than Tremont Mark, who both handled the ball quite a lot. So that's not really a good number for him, and so. Yeah, it wasn't really surprising to see him, head out the door. I don't think there was going to be a role for him unless he was willing to, play a bench role for free heading into his senior year. I just highly doubt that he was going to be willing to do that. And so, yeah, that wasn't too surprising. Nick Cody, that was one of those where, yeah, there was a possibility it could happen, but like you said, I mean, I was there standing next to him whenever he said in the locker room in San Jose after the loss to Purdue that he was going to be back next season. And so obviously I don't think that he necessarily had his opinions change about that, but it certainly seems like something behind closed doors changed that maybe made him feel like, okay, well, even though I don't want to leave, this is probably the best decision for me to do so anyway. Got to give him a lot of credit though. It's just really unfortunate to see on social media when some of these guys leave and everyone's in the comments saying good riddance. It's like, come on, let's be better than that. Nick Cody literally had the best game of his career in the round of 32 against Gonzaga, and Texas doesn't win that game without him. He had like 12 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, a steal. I mean, come on. He didn't play.
He played great that game.
Yeah, he didn't play consistently all season. He fell out of the rotation. but he started the season, is on the bench for multiple games in a row, doesn't play for like multiple weeks in a row, and yet he still is able to do that in March Madness. I think you should give the guy a lot of credit. Cam Heide, that was definitely the most surprising for me. I thought, he was a starter on this team. I think he didn't start maybe 2 games, I think, or 3 games. One of those was senior night. One of those was the second game of the year. And the other one was because he was sick against Kentucky. Other than that, he started the entire season. And, it wasn't perfect for him. There was times where he felt like he disappeared. But at the end of the day, he made the biggest shot of the season against Gonzaga. Similar to how I was talking about Nick Cody, both the Texas doesn't win that game without Nick Cody or Camden Heide. And so Camden Heide obviously hits that triple in the corner, helps seal the win there. This guy is now heading into the portal with 13 NCAA tournament appearances, or having appeared in 13 NCAA tournament games, I should say. So he's going to be highly coveted. And I think that kind of hurts a little bit because you need that experience, you need that veteran shooting on your roster if you want to get back to March Madness. But it's possible that, because Camden Heide had said he wanted to be back too. So it's possible that maybe Texas just feels like they have a potential upgrade in the portal waiting for them. We'll have to wait and see, though. At the end of the day, Camden Heide wasn't the best defender. He didn't offer much else outside of his shooting. Wasn't really a playmaker at all. He was just a 3-point shooter, and he could have some nice putback dunks here and there as well because he could jump out the gym. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But those are the 3 portal departures so far. The only one I could see maybe following that up could be like John Clark, who redshirted this entire year as his true freshman season. He's the big man, highly skilled. But he had an injury come out of high school, and so he redshirted, and we'll have to see what happens with him. Does he want to ride the bench again next season, or does he want to, and while learning under Sean Miller still, or does he want to go to another potentially a mid-major where he can get some playing time? We'll have to wait and see. And then there's the international guys as well, Louis Obiora and Declan Duru. We'll have to wait and see what happens with them. Not really sure there. But those are the 3 guys, the primary names to follow leaving Texas. But now it's time to, see who can be joining the roster.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in just a second, Zach. But on Cam Heide, he was a guy that, like, Texas's biggest issue, or one of their biggest issues defensively, they had a lot of issues defensively, obviously, because they were one of the worst defensive teams in the SEC. But Texas could not stop a skilled 4-man to save their lives last season. And Cam Heide was a big part of that. He just didn't have the size to defend the position at a consistent rate. And I think that kind of played into his struggles a little bit. And with these 3 guys also, you're losing 56.9 minutes per game of playing time. Nick Cody averaged, I think, 15.8 minutes per game. Simeon Wilcher averaged 18.6, and Cam Heide averaged 22.5. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of playing time on your roster that's departing outside of Dalen Swain, outside of Kendall Weaver, outside of Jordan Pope and Tremont Mark. I mean, you're losing a lot on this roster next year, which it is concerning. But I think that we were going to discuss some names here in a second that are going to be very interesting to kind of fill that void. But here's another thing that I would like to say too. And I see this quite a lot, and you kind of alluded to it when people are saying things like good riddance to a player that enters the transfer portal. It's not always the player's decision. It's not always every time a player enters the portal. It's not, I just want to go chase money somewhere else. A lot of times, and this happens in football too, we saw a few examples of it from the football roster. Trey Wisner, Parker Livingston. Like, you can stick around if you want to. We would like to have you on the team, but we're bringing in other players who are going to be above you on the depth chart, and they're going to take your playing time, and they're going to affect your NIL because they are going to be a bigger part of our roster. We like you. We think you're a good player. We want you to stick around, but if you like to leave, we would encourage it. That kind of stuff happens all of the time in the transfer portal. So it's not like Nick Cody. I mean, you heard him after the game. Zach got it on audio. I'm going to be back next year. and then a couple weeks later he's gone. It sounds to me like it wasn't his decision to leave necessarily. So so I don't want people getting on social media and dumping all over these kids because they're entering the portal. It's not always their decision. So just keep that in mind before you lash out at some of these, 19, 20-year-old kids. I mean, give me a break, you losers. Anyway, let's talk about some players that Texas could be pursuing. There's one that we feel really good about, Zach, that Texas has a good shot with. And there's some other ones in there as well. But why don't you give us a few of the names that you're hearing so far in terms of Texas and portal chatter?
Yeah, well, I'll just get it out of the way at first. TCU forward David Punch. I mean, there's been sources telling Texas Longhorns on SI. On 3 also reported it, that Texas is seen as the team in the lead for David Punch out of the portal. So that's great news for Sean Miller. He immediately would slot in as your starting power forward, which, as you had mentioned, Texas didn't really have a good enough starting four-man last season. I mean, Dalen Swain could, play the small ball 4, but it wasn't really necessarily his strength. He wasn't a true 4 there. And so David Punch, though, he's a guy that can stretch the 4 a little bit, but he's really physical. He's really strong. He's a good rebounder. He can score down low. I think that if Texas is able to seal the deal there, you can't say for sure yet, because who knows what team will come out of nowhere and throw another NIL number out there. You just never know with these things. But if Texas is able to seal the deal there, that's going to be their star gem out of the portal. And pairing him alongside Modest Vokatitis, that's a really good front court to work with. And so we'll have to wait and see there with David Punch.
Real quick, also on David Punch, he averages 1.9 blocks per game in 2025, 2026. That's something that Texas could use at the position. I'm just saying.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, Modest Vokatitis led the team in blocks, and he didn't even average a block per game. So you need a physical presence down there, and hopefully they get a shot blocker off the bench as well. But if you have that in your starting lineup, that's going to be a massive improvement. It's hard for it not to be improvement, considering how the defense played this past season. And speaking of Punch, I mean, he is from the Colleen area, which is just north 35 on I-35 north of Austin. So kind of a homecoming for him if he potentially chooses Texas. We'll have to wait and see. But there's lots of other names. I mean, Isaiah Johnson, point guard, combo guard out of Colorado. I believe it was Inside Texas that reported that he's actually going to be taking a visit here this upcoming week. So the dead period's over. He's been a name that a lot of fans have been following, and it really seems like something serious is going to be happening there. We'll have to wait and see, though. Lots of other names to keep track of. There's one that I saw kind of surface today a little bit. Very, very interesting. There's a little bit of buzz on social media surrounding this guy. Nothing super concrete yet, because I'm sure a lot of teams are interested in him. But a G Leaguer, a Bryson Warren, a guard who was on the Knicks roster. I don't believe he ever played in a regular season game because that would create tons of, legality issues, I believe, and like how we saw Charles Bediako. But this guy, we'll have to wait and see. But definitely a name to just kind of keep track of. Really, 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 really good shooter. I believe this past G League season, he led all players in 3-pointers made. So really, really good shooter. If you're playing the G League, that means you're a borderline NBA player. So he could really stand out at the college level. Not saying things going to happen there. Still trying to do more research on that. But something to keep track of there. Bryson Warren, he was on the Westchester Knicks, that G League team. Go look at some of his highlights. This guy can really fill it up on offense. He'd slot in as your starting guard. If you are able to pair him with like Isaiah Johnson out of Colorado, or who knows what that means for Austin Gooseby? Does he come off the bench? So we'll have to just wait and see. Nothing official there yet. Just a name to keep track of. And then, another guy, Texas is clearly doing their due diligence when it comes to the backcourt. John Rothstein, College Basketball Insider, he reported earlier today that Texas is one of a few teams that is showing strong interest in Virginia Tech transfer guard Nicholas Avdalis. I believe that's how you pronounce that. So he was a freshman this past season, international guy. Obviously the Texas has been contacting a lot of guards, so not necessarily, doesn't mean that he's gonna be wanting to choose Texas as a finalist or anything like that. But last season as a freshman, started 31 games for the Hokies, averaged 12.1 points, 3.1 rebounds, 4.6 assists per game. Really good all around offensive guy in the backcourt.
And he's 6'9".
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even realize that. 6'9", 215. That's a lot of size right there. So really interesting name to keep track of there. Obviously, if you're getting a guy like him with his production, he's not coming in to come off the bench. He'd be a starter for you. So we'll have to wait and see there. He had 30 points this past season against Western Carolina. So he can fill it up. Had multiple double-digit games throughout the year as well. 19 points against North Carolina. 21 points against Stanford, and kind of goes on. I completely missed it. He had 33 points in an overtime win over Providence with 5 threes, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. I mean, interesting name to watch there. There's a lot of people that Texas has contacted. Obviously, a few other names that have the Texas has reportedly contacted include UT Rio Grande Valley guard Corey Cotton, Colgate guard Jalen Cox, a few other names there. Obviously, there was reports that Villanova transfer Bryce Lindsey was going to be on a Zoom call with Texas. List kind of just goes on and on. Obviously, they're not going to get all these guys, but there's just a few names out there, and there's obviously tons of names that maybe we haven't even heard of. So, definitely interesting times right now. If you look at the roster currently with the players on the team, it's not much. So you're going to need to add some guys here pretty soon.
Yeah, and just for those who aren't aware out there, Zach, Isaiah Johnson from Colorado, is he a point guard or is he a combo guard? Is he a shooting guard? What position would he potentially play on Texas?
Yeah, he's pretty much more of a combo guard. So it kind of just depends on what Sean Miller decides there. If he wants to operate as the lead point guard, I think he's certainly capable of that. He's not necessarily seen as a true point guard like maybe some of these other guys in the portal. But I think you need your point guard to be able to fill it up. And at the end of the day, Texas didn't really have a true point guard this past season, and they were able to make it a few plays away from going to an Elite Eight. So as long as you have playmakers in the backcourt that can also score, doesn't really matter if there's shooting guard or combo guard or point guard. They just need to be able to play make and run the offense. So I think Isaiah Johnson can certainly do that. But to answer your question, yeah, he's more of a combo guard guy. Doesn't mean that he can't play point guard though in Sean Miller's system, because obviously if he's going to be potentially taking a visit, as Inside Texas had reported, that clearly shows that they're confident in what he can potentially do as the point guard. But we'll just have to wait and see, what happens over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and there's going to be more names that pop into this list. As we go forward, it seems like Texas is kind of taking a different approach to the portal. They're not going to shy away from chasing some of these big dogs. I mean, if you look at the On3 Rivals transfer portal rankings, Isaiah Johnson is the number 2 player at his position in the portal right now. So they are chasing these big dogs, Zach.
Yep.
And you love to hear that. Seems like Sean Miller is really trying to go all in for this team, and hopefully it works out for him, because we saw what he could do with a flawed roster last year. If you get this guy the players that he wants, and you get the right collection of talent and skill set for Sean Miller to deploy onto a basketball court, I think he can do a lot of special things with it. So, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe Texas will surprise us all in the portal. It's been a minute since they've surprised us in the portal in basketball, so hopefully they'll do it this season. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Please make sure to like and subscribe and rate our podcast. And also comment down below on YouTube. It really helps us out in the algorithm. And let us know your thoughts. But most importantly, be sure to tell somebody you love them. We'll catch you in the next one.